So today we will be discussing about the opportunities in geotechnical engineering. So as you all fresh graduates, you will be knowing about what is geotechnical engineering. So it is also a part of civil engineering. So you have your under civil engineering, you have your structural engineering, you have water resources, you have environmental, also education, transportation also. So likewise, you have a geotechnical engineering also in your under civil engineering. So some of you are taking geotechnical engineering, a postgraduate also, or taking a career in geotechnical engineering. I would be appreciative. So today, these are the contents which we are going to look into in today's presentation. So first of all, what is the geotechnical engineering? What are the concepts involved in the geotechnical engineering? Okay, then the historical development. How the geotechnical engineering field was formed. Then basic fundamentals in geotechnics. So in the basic fundamentals, you would have already covered in your semesters in your civil engineering curriculum. So it will be a law of mechanics, your soil water interactions, and some equations. So, but still, I will just brush up what are the basic fundamentals in geotechnics. And then why do we need geotechnical engineers? So once you finish your theoretical classes, once you enter into your professional life, you should also understand what is your roles and responsibilities as a geotechnical engineer. What is your day-to-day task that will be given to you as a geotechnical engineer. Okay, then the practical applications, here you have to see what are the geotechnical problems as per the site conditions, why geotechnical engineers are really needed. Okay, and then a case study. Case study, I hear it is a very simple and very interesting project where I was involved in that. So I wanted to bring that project under my case study. Next is software tools. These software tools, once you practice as your geotechnical engineering field, you should also have the software skills like how to model in your software, how to get the numerical solutions. So it is basically a finite element solutions or mathematical equations which is built up in software itself. But you should not misinterpret that software is a final tool to give out your solutions to the engineering problems. It is only a tool to help you to guide your engineering problems. But finally, it is about your engineering judgment and how you foresee your geotechnical problems and how you give your value engineering solutions. So this is how we do in our professional life. And then finally, we'll be looking into the career and job opportunities in the geotechnical engineering field. So let's see the introduction part. When you enter into your professional life, you will be called as a geotechnical engineering team or a geotechnics team or ground engineering team. Only in your semester classes, you will be referring as soil mechanics and foundation engineering. But once you enter into corporate life, you will be in a team of a geotechnics team, ground engineering team, and geotechnical engineering team. Okay, so basically geotechnical engineering will involve soil mechanics, rock mechanics, foundation engineering, ground improvement, geosynthetics, geoenvironmental engineering, and much more. You have even a coastal geotechnical engineering as well as your marine geotechnical engineering. We'll look into that in the later slides. But it is not a must that all concepts you have to professionally develop. So as a geotechnical engineering, you cannot be expert in all your field. But yes, at least a basic understanding of your geotechnical, how to solve your geotechnical problems, you must handle. For example, your ground improvement, maybe you will not know how to do your ground improvement in your professional life, ground improvement, or whether it is geosynthetics or geoenvironmental. But we have a specialist to do this work. They will have a separate company called the ground improvement company, geosynthetics or geoenvironmental. There are different companies where a contractor will hire them to do their part of the work. Okay, I will explain in detail in further slides. So basically, geotechnics is a study of behavior of soils under each different kinds of loads. So you have soils categorized as coarse grain soils and fine grain soils. So coarse grain soils are all called cohesionless soils, which are sand and gravel, and fine grain soils are cohesive soils, which are silts and clay. They are differentiated by their particle size, right? So all the soils will behave in a different pattern under the influence of load. Once you have your soil conditions and ground conditions, even you will have your water table inside your ground. So once you have a water table inside your ground conditions, you must also know how to take into your water factor inside your when you're calculating your geotechnical while doing a geotechnical analysis and design. Okay, so it is a combination of law of mechanics. Law of mechanics is nothing but the fundamentals you have done in your semesters, and your experience, maybe from fresher. When you have after fresher, after 2 years of experience, your experience will really matter, right? And then engineering judgment. This is a little logical thinking you have to do when you analyze your geotechnical problems. So all this together will make you a geotechnical expert. So from geotechnical engineer, you can after 10 years or 20 years after attaining all your experience and how you foresee your geotechnical problems, this will make you a geotechnical expert. Next, let's see about the historical development. If you see before 17th century, the soil was used as a construction material for the building foundations and for the irrigation purposes. But there was no such theories like earth pressure theories, consolidation theories. There was no such theories. Just like that, they were building their foundations. By doing so, they had encountered so much of problems like huge settlements and building failures. So it was just a trial and error method. They had built their foundations. So even they have to put the additional cost to repair it also, right? So once later on, after 17th century to 19th century, some theories were developed by Coulomb, Rankine, which is for the earth pressure theories, Bosonic for the stress distribution, more Coulomb, yeah. This is for the stress envelope, Atterberg for the soil characterization. So these theories were developed between the 17th century and 19th century. So after 19th century, in 1925, Carl Terzaghi, he came out with a consolidation theory, and he was the one who coined the term soil mechanics. So that is why we call Terzaghi as father of soil mechanics. And under the soil mechanics, so much of theories came. So you have to put your Coulomb's theory, Rankine's theory, Bosonic's theory, and many more theories came under soil mechanics. And this is what you're seeing in your soil mechanics textbook also. Okay, so next. So let's see about the basic fundamentals in geotechnics. So I'm not going to take much time in this because you would have already learned in your semesters about the basic terminologies and basic fundamental equations, how to solve any kind of small problems. Okay. So here in relationships and soil classification, you would have learned about your basic terminologies like what is meant by unit weight, your relative density, porosity, void ratio. So there are some relationships how to solve your E value, or it's a void ratio or a porosity. And if you see about the soil classification, you have gravel, you have sand, you have silt, you have clay. You should also understand, or you should have mastered in your semester itself, how to classify these soils. It is not only IS Indian standard classification, you should also think broad, and you should also look into HASHTO classification. You should also look into ASTM classification and British classifications also. So once you have your job in abroad, then you must master your things in even in ASHTO also, HASHTO British codes as well as Euro codes also. Okay, and then soil hydraulics. So soil hydraulics, here you will be estimating your permeability. So you know coarse-grained soils are highly permeable and cohesive soils are less permeable. So you can calculate your soil permeability, and you can have your seepage analysis done here. So you have some theories behind. But these seepage analysis, if you see here, this is an embankment construction where your seepage analysis is very common in these type of construction. So you have your water surface in the upstream side, you have your downstream side. So you don't want your upstream phase water to seep through your embankment and go to your downstream side. So this is why you calculate your seepage analysis. Once you allow your water to go into your downstream phase, you will have your soil erosion, your slope will not be stable here. So you should also protect your water not going to downstream phase. So you should have some drainage material built here in the form of like you should also have a filter material here, so that your upstream phase water enters your filter material and doesn't enter your downstream phase. So this is the concept of the seepage analysis. One such analysis we are estimating by using the software called GeoSlope. So I will give you what all the listed softwares in my further slides, okay, under the software tools. So next is stress distribution. So in this topic, you would have learned about the Bosenick's theory, Westergaard's theory, Newmark's chart. So you should understand like when a point load or uniformly distributed load or a strip load, and is a line load if it is on the ground. So you should know how the stress is getting distributed below your ground level. Okay, so I will give you a basic explanation. This is a Bosenick's chart. But Bosenick also have some equations, but indirectly we use this chart. I was using this chart in my professional life also. So if you see, this is your footing, right? Footing load. So you should know how, due to this footing load or a building load, how much stress is entering your ground. So till what depth your stress is getting distributed. Okay. So if your width of your foundation, say it's 1 meter, so your depth of the influence will be till 2b. Okay. So if your width is 1 meter, so you will have a 2 meter of influence below your base of the footing. So till here you have to calculate your settlement. Okay, fine. And then same thing, if you have your strip footing, your depth of influence will be up to 4 to 5b. So this kind of lines you refer as isobars or pressure bulk. So in case of square footing, it will be a depth of 2 meter for a wide of 1 meter. But if a strip footing is width is equal to 1 meter, then you will have an influence of 4 meter. So this concept you have to take into account for calculating your settlement. Okay. And then next is the consolidation and settlement analysis. So you should have learned about the Terzaghis one-dimensional consolidation analysis. How do you calculate your primary consolidation, secondary consolidation, and also for post-grain soils, you should have the immediate settlement calculation. So it all depends on your type of the soils also. So you should have mastered this always in your semesters. And then shear strength of the soil. This is basically your talking about your soil strength, whether it is medium dense or it's a very dense in terms of sand or clay. Clay is defined as your very soft or stiff clay or very stiff clay. So in case of cohesive soils, you have cohesion term, right? So it is in terms of kilonewton per meter square. So cohesion will always be denoted in kilonewton per meter square, or you call it as kPa, which is a kilopascal. But for the cohesionless soil, which is sand and gravel, you always represent their strength in terms of angle of internal friction, which is a phi angle. Okay, so these basic cohesion and phi angle you will have to determine using laboratory testing methods. Like you have a direct shear method, you have a uniaxial compression test, you have a triaxial compression test. By using this, you should determine your shear strength of the soil, because this is more essential for any geotechnical analysis and design. Okay, so you should know the concept behind this. Next is slope stability. So this is a picture from the geoslope. So slope stability, in this you should know about your Bishop's method, method of slices, Fellinius method. So basically it determines your factor of safety. So factor of safety tells you what slope angle you have. This is just a trial and error method, right? So if you take 1 vertical is to 1.5 horizontal, and if you get a factor of safety well greater than 1.2, you term the slope as stable. Okay, so there are many methods, Bishop's method or Fellinius method, to determine the factor of safety based upon your slope angle. Okay, so these slope stability I will be covering in my practical applications. It's a very common geotechnical problem in construction sites. Okay, the next is earth pressure and retaining walls. In earth pressures and retaining walls, you will be talking about Rankine's and Coulomb's earth pressure theories. That is active earth pressure, passive earth pressure, pressure at rest. So these are the kind of terminologies you should have learned. And then these terminologies, anyway, you should apply on your retaining walls also. So if it is like anti-gravity retaining walls or cantilever retaining walls, you think the retaining walls are only compound walls. But in addition to that, in our construction projects, the retaining walls are also called as earth retention systems, which to support the walls of the construction. Okay, so you have your construction here in this picture. If you see, this is a construction going on, but if you have a huge excavation below your ground level, then you should support these walls, pile wall or retaining wall. So this is called a sheet pile wall. This is not a concrete wall. This is a steel structures, sheet piles and steel structures. This will have a capacity to hold your soil mass laterally. Okay, so behind your sheet pile, you have huge soil mass because of the soil mass. When you have your greater depth of excavation, your soil mass will tend to erode, right? Slide inside. That is why these walls are installed to support your soil mass laterally. Okay, then shallow foundations and deep foundations. So in shallow foundations, you should have known about the Tarzagi's bearing capacity, Mayer bearing capacities. So you have your cohesion term. So you have three terms while calculating your bearing capacity. That's a cohesion term and a surcharge term, width term. So you will also calculate based on your friction angle. You will be calculating your bearing capacity factor based upon your shape of the footing, shape factor, based on your depth of foundation, depth factor, inclination factor. If there is a water table, you should also take the water factor into account. Okay. The next is deep foundation. Once the shallow foundations are not feasible for the building loads, then you will take an option of deep foundations. So you will be calculating about your pile capacities, vertical capacity, lateral capacity, uplift capacities. So these were during your undergraduate courses and postgraduates. Next, let's get into the responsibilities of geotechnical engineer. So once you enter into your firm, you should know what is a task given to you as a geotechnical engineer. Once before you receive your offer letter also, you should read your job description thoroughly. So that's why you understand what are the responsibilities as a geotechnical engineer. Maybe you will enter your firm as a fresher. So when you are in a fresher stage, there will be some mentor, your lead manager will guide you step by step. But if you've already gained an experience, if you're jumping to some other company, suppose you have 5 to 10 years of experience, then obviously you can get involved in the project directly. But you can also have some little supervision from your lead manager. That is not a problem. Okay, so every time in the project you have two stages. So it is a tender stage as well as your operating stage. So in the tender stage, what you do, you analyze and design, and ultimately you will be giving your final estimate cost to the client. So client is the one who is giving you the project. So tender stage is nothing but a bidding, okay? Bidding for the project. So what you do in that, you study about the project, you carry out the initial analysis and design. You don't go into a detailed stage, but you carry out your initial analysis, and then finally you arrive at some cost. So this cost and design proposal you will be submitting to the client. So if the client is more happy with your tender proposal and the cost value, he will be awarding that project to you. Then you get into your operating stage. If the client is not happy with your proposal or any value, he will give this project to some other company. Now suppose in tender stage, what all you have to do? So first you have to do your desk study of the project. So in that you will have your tender documents given to you. These tender documents will be given to you from the client. Okay, so you will have your basic description of the project. You will have some basic inputs for your analysis and design, like you will have your building loads, what is the type of the building, how much it is G+4 or G+10 or G+20. And also if it is in the ocean, if it is in the marine, then you will also get some few details about the wind, wave, current, tides. Okay. These documents will always be supported with some drawings. So you have to look into the drawing, you have to go into your building layout, you have to see where the buildings, major building loads are coming into. You have to study the building, which is a major important buildings. Major important building will be operational building areas, something like that. At least will be the administration officers or something like that. So you should categorize which is a maximum load and minimum load also. And then study geological conditions. So in this, if you can do a Google search about the area, like if you are in north part of the India, You can have a Google search, like you can go past history, you can take 10 to 15 years of past history of that site. You can study so that you can get a basic knowledge on a type of the soil and the type of the rock present. Or else, even if you have a nearby existing soil investigation data also, you can get. Suppose nearby your project, you have some other existing project going on, or a project is already completed. You can get the existing soil investigation. You can request a client and you can get your existing soil investigation. For example, if it is a building structure, your structural people will be interested in calculating some foundation pressures. They will be doing their part in their foundation design. So ultimately, structural engineers will come to geotechnical engineers for the calculate for the bearing capacity value and settlement. So in that case, if you have your existing soil investigation ready, so you can pull out some data from the investigation and you can calculate your bearing capacity and settlement, and you can give the final value to the structural people. This is just the initial analysis and design. Your tender documents will always be subjected to variation. Okay, so in the later stage, it will definitely vary. Your building loads also will be varying. The next is fine. Once your tender stage is over, your project is awarded, you're going into an operating stage. So your first initial task should be you have to visit your site. So site visit, you can do, if you're more interested, you can even do it in your tender stage also. So for operating stage, you must do it. So site visit to investigate the risk or geological hazards for the site. For example, the hazard in the sense there may be many hazards also. I will give one such example, like if there is any pond, it's full of water in the sites, the major building loads are coming into that. So you cannot place your building foundation on directly on the water, right? So you have to fill it. You have to fill the pond. So you should look into how to fill your pond. You cannot just dump your soil into your pond. What will happen? It will have a huge settlements due to the large building foundation. So there are technical specifications like how to fill your pond also. So these are minor risks before you start your construction project. Okay. So likewise, there are many complex problems also. So what you do is before going into your geotechnical investigation program, I will tell you 4 different peoples are involved during the life cycle of the project. So starting from the highest hierarchy, there will be a client, there will be a consultant, and then there will be a contractor, and there will be a subcontractor also. So client is the one who is giving you the project, is giving you the land, and finally you have to spend your man hours, everything, and you have to design for him, you have to construct for him, and then finally he will pay you. Okay. So consultant, who is this guy? Consultant. He is midway between the client and the contractor. It doesn't mean that contractor doesn't face client. So in some meetings, even contractor also should face the client. Okay, so consultant is the guy who is going to review the contractor work. Basically, contractor will be responsible for the design work, construction work, or procurement. Procurement is nothing but purchasing. For your construction, you need to purchase your material, right? So in the professional way, you tell purchasing as a procurement. Okay, so design work, procurement work, construction work. Finally, if there is any temporary work done in the construction site, he is also responsible to remove it also. So that is called decommissioning. So contractor is much more responsible for the particular project. So consultant is the guy who is going to review the contractor's work. Sometimes nowadays the consultant itself is doing the design because it's a mutual understanding between the client, consultant, and the contractor. Contractor doesn't want to take the headache of the design work, so consultant itself will take that design work. Because what happens is, right, contractor designs and consultant has the rights to comment each and every design work. So contractor doesn't want to take that headache, so consultant itself is nowadays taking the design work also. So this is the consultant will be acting between the client and the contractor. So there's a client, consultant, contractor, and subcontractor will be the one who is going to work for the contractor. Okay, so for example, some subcontractor is like you can be a geotechnical investigation company. A contractor cannot do a geotechnical investigation for the project. So what he does is a contractor will hire a subcontractor to do the geotechnical investigation program for him. So as a geotechnical engineer, you have to take your building layout, You have to foresee your building locations, major building loads, minor building loads, and you have to locate your boreholes accordingly. So geotechnical investigation program will be consisting of field test as well as the laboratory test. So field test will be like standard penetration test, cone penetration test, plate load test, trial pits, and there are much more tests in the field. So these samples, once you finish your field testing at the site, you will be transporting these samples to the laboratory. So you will have many laboratory testing. Like you have to perform your sieve analysis, and then you will have a liquid limit, plastic limit, which is a clay soils, and then you have to, as I told in your shear strength, you have to determine your shear strength by direct shear method or triaxial method or unconfined compression test methods also. So this is the basic program of the geotechnical investigation. Okay, so prepare geotechnical specifications for a specific project. So at times, geotechnical engineer also should prepare the construction specifications, which is directly called geotechnical specification. So this geotechnical specification means like when you begin your geotechnical investigation program, you will have to write a specification for the geotechnical investigation program, and this specification you will be submitting to this guy, geotechnical investigation contractor. Okay, he is basically a subcontractor, right? So you have to submit this specification to him, and then and most importantly, when a subcontractor is carrying out this geotechnical investigation program for you, you must go to the site at once or thrice in a week or something like that. You have to plan accordingly, and you have to inspect these guys, how they are doing, how the investigation is carried out, and you must also visit the laboratories and check how the laboratory testing is also carried out. If there is any indiscrepancies, you can raise a complaint or you can cancel the contract of this guy. Okay. Okay, fine. Everything is your geotechnical investigation program is over, and then what you have to do is you have to get the factual report. Factual report is comprising of the field test and laboratory test. So who will give this? This factual report will be given by the geotechnical investigation subcontractor. Okay, you have to review the factual report. Your duty is to now review your factual report. So whatever you have observed or as per the schedule or everything is covered, like whatever boreholes you have given, all the boreholes have been carried out, or a plate load test have been carried out, trial pits, and whatever laboratory tests you have mentioned, everything is carried out or not, everything will be reviewed in your actual soil report. And then once you finish this report, then you come into your analysis and design stage. So your analysis and design stage, once you carry out, your first step is to pull out the soil properties. Without soil properties, you cannot start your geotechnical analysis and design. For example, you have to determine your bearing capacity. So if it is a cohesive soil, you have to take out the cohesion value. If it is a coarse grain soil, then you have to pull out the angle of internal friction value. And there are many things like you have to take out the unit weight. You have to calculate the Young's modulus of the soil from this report. Okay, so it depends on your N value mainly. So this is a factual report. This is a sample of the factual report. So here you will be having your SPT N value. Say it is from 0 to 0.5 depth. You don't have any N blows. Maybe top 5.5 meter they will be excluding, and then 0.5 to 1 meter you have number of blows is 24. 1.5 you have 24. So these N values will indirectly represent your strength of the soil. So once you're in the range of N values 10 to 30, then you describe your soil as a medium dense sand. So it is a medium dense to dense brown, light, reddish brown silty sand, fine sand with occasional cemented sand pieces. But ultimately you will define this condition as medium dense since your N values are ranging between 10 to 30. Yes. So 30 to 50 is a dense sand, greater than 50 is a very dense sand. So this is one of the sample pulled from the factual report. So based on this N value, you will correlate your C value as well as your angle of internal friction value. If it is a dense sand, obviously from this you can interpret your phi value. If I am in the position of designing, then for these values, for N values 20 to 30, I would give a pi value equal to 32 degrees and design my, calculate my bearing capacity. Okay, suppose if your foundation is at 1 meter, okay, 1 meter, so N value is like 25. So roughly you can get a 200 kp bearing capacity. Then you have to prepare your geotechnical interpretative report. So this will be representation of your factual data. So whatever n values you have seen, these n values will be represented in the graphical form. Once you have seen all the n values, you have to put it in your Excel sheet. From the Excel sheet, you can bring it into graph. So in these graphs will be represented in your interpretative report. So your interpretative report will speak about the detailed brief description about the project, where the project is, what is the type of the soil present, what are the soil layers present below the ground level, and how did you find your, like you have to give your n value, standard n penetration value. And then once you finish with this, you get into your analysis and design stage. So analysis and design stage, for example, if it is a foundation problem, you calculate your bearing capacity, right? So in that borehole log report, it was like medium dense to dense sand. So you take a phi angle of 32 degrees, and then you calculate your bearing capacity factors, shape factors, depending upon your what is the size of the foundation you're taking, and depth of the foundation based upon your depth of foundation. So once you are arriving at the basic parameters, and you calculate your bearing capacity and the settlement, and those things you have to include in the geotechnical design report. So interpretation report is only the representation of your factual report. The design report is separate. What is your calculation analysis, what you're doing based on the factual data, you have to present your geotechnical design reports. Okay, create a 2D or 3D visualization of the soil model using geotechnical software. So if I want to calculate my settlement in the geotechnical software, instead of making a manual calculation, I wanted to go for a 2D software. Then I can model my soil layers. Like now we have seen a sample of borehole report, right? So I will be giving 0 to 5 meters medium dense, and 5 to 8 meter I would be giving it as very dense based upon the borehole log report. So once I give the soil model, my water table conditions, I have to also see what is the water table in the borehole also. Okay, so these borehole you will see when you're carrying out your geotechnical investigation program. Once you have finished with the settlement, you will run the analysis with the geotechnical software. Normally, I would use a Plaxis model to have a Plaxis 2D to estimate my settlement. So once you are done with the settlement, again you will go back to your design report. You will represent your results in the design report. Okay, and develop design drawing specifications for the construction projects. You are also responsible for the drawings also. You should hire a draftsperson for that, for making your drawings ready. The foundation, maybe structural people itself will be taking care. But if it is an excavation problem, slope stability problem, a geotechnical engineer has to develop the design drawings. Because finally, when you're giving to the client, it will be these geotechnical reports, geotechnical design reports, as well as your design drawings. In your contractor position, when you're a contracting firm, you have to submit these reports first to the consultant. Okay, this consultant will be approving your interpretative report and design report, but he will have the review on your report. Once he is a review, he is happy with your design and interpretation, then he will approve, and these can be submitted to the client people. Okay, adopt value engineering method while giving the recommendations. So this is also called as optimization method. So if you have a pile of 1200 1200 meter dia, and you are giving a pile length of some 20 meter, you should also think of the alternative solution, how to cost control. Same if it is working with the 1100, you can also reduce your pile length and see if it is working. If it is not feasible for the design, you don't have to change. But if you can see, optimize your pile length and pile dia, if you can check, you can optimize it and bring within your allowable limit, then you can have a cost control method that is called a valuable engineering method or optimization method. Okay, so that is also, as a geotechnical engineering, you have to adopt it. So attend the client meetings. Like when you have your project going on, then a contractor will be called, consultant will be called, even sometimes subcontractor also will be called. They will have a minutes meeting in the design office or in the construction office. So they will be discussing about the project progress, budget, and time constraints. There will be meetings at specified intervals, maybe weekly once or something like that. Okay, so finally evaluate the team performance and determining the training needs to meet the performance objectives. So when you're in your lead engineering position, when you're a manager and you have 10 to 15 subordinates under you, then you should also be in the position to evaluate their performance. And if they lack in some subject matter, you should also give them the training to meet the performance objectives. Okay. Now let's get into the real geotechnical problems. So you can have a brief look into these roles and responsibilities for geotechnical. This is what I have discussed till now. Okay. Yeah. The next is we can get into the practical applications. These are the real geotechnical problems which you will be facing in the construction activities. The first is the foundation. So basically, you will be responsible for calculating your bearing capacity and settlement. If the shallow foundation is not feasible, then you would go for your pile foundations. So as I said, you will have to start with a geotechnical investigation program and then review a factual report, pull out the soil properties, and then you have to prepare your geotechnical interpretative report, and you have to estimate your bearing capacity and settlement. So in this main thing, you have to check both the bearing capacity and settlement. You cannot say your bearing capacity is only a major failure. No, even bearing capacity as well as the settlement, both will be in a critical stage. So you have to check both. So suppose you have a good stratum, a bearing capacity can be 250 kPa or 200 kPa, but at the same time settlement may not be in the allowable limit. So it can be 25 mm or it can be more than 50 mm or 25 mm. So for 25 mm you give for isolated footings, 50 mm for the raft foundations, right? But one more important thing is here the settlement should not be checked for your bearing capacity value. You should be checked for your foundation pressure value. This foundation pressure value will be given to you by the structural people. So you should, once they have their dead loads, live loads, wind loads, they will design the foundation, right? So automatically they will end up with the foundation pressure. So for this foundation pressure, you have to calculate your settlements. Okay, so you have to check whether it is within 25 mm or within 50 mm as the allowable limit. Okay, but same time bearing capacity you have to check. You cannot ignore it because this bearing capacity you are checking against your foundation pressure. The foundation pressure value should be lesser than the bearing capacity, right? So that is why I'm telling you to check both bearing capacity as well as your settlement. And then if shallow foundations is not feasible, then you go for your pile foundations. So the first 2-3 steps you have to repeat it. Like pile foundations, if you have very high rise buildings, so shallow foundations will not work. And also in offshore, if you are having your structure in the middle of the sea or nearby shore, then your pile foundations is a better option for that. You cannot go shallow foundation into the sea. So in the pile foundations, you will estimate pile capacity, right? So you will estimate your vertical capacity, uplift capacities, lateral capacities. So these are all basic equations you have for post-grain soils and cohesive soils. So once you're done with that, you will additionally you have to do your pile drivability study. So once you have your pile hammer hitting your pile, what will happen? You will be generating your dynamic stresses. So you will have to you'll have to do your pile drivability study also. And finally, you should also propose for your pile testing also. So you can have, out of all these piles, you can have one initial pile testing. So to see whether whatever the cross section you have given, the diameter of the pile you have given, the length of the pile you have given is okay or not for your loads. Okay. And then next is earth retention walls. So these are nothing but the retaining walls actually. Okay, so these are rigid walls used for supporting the soil mass laterally. So what will happen is it is like retaining walls like compound wall, right? So these walls are used in the construction sites. The compound wall you will be just your buildings in your construction project using these walls to retain the soil mass laterally, because what happens when you have a basement in the building below your ground level, then you will have to excavate your soil. So when you have to excavate your soil mass here will not have to retain by its own weight, so it will fall, right? When you excavate, it will try to fall. So in order to retain this soil mass, you will have to use your pile wall, which is a sheet pile wall or a secant pile wall. So this is the sheet pile wall, secant pile wall, contiguous pile walls, diaphragm wall. Not all the piles are used for the construction purpose, but it is having a specific reason which pile to use for which purpose. Okay.